Hey folks, I'm Dino Monoxylus.
I'm Dom Liberati, and this is episode 2 of SVT Time. I am so honored to introduce you to the father of the SVT, Mr. Bill Hughes, we have on set today. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. So how did you get started at Ampeg? When was it? How did it happen?
Well, my sister was dating a guy in the Coast Guard, and he had an Ampeg guitar amp that he used to play, and it developed some problems, and I did a repair job on it. I lived in Rahway, New Jersey, and Ampeg was in Linden, New Jersey, and it was like maybe 5 miles away. And I went down there and purchased a brand new speaker, and I encountered Jess Oliver. That's how I got an internship at Ampeg.
Okay.
Huh.
Started as an internship.
How
And
old were you then?
I think I was 15 years
No
old.
kidding, huh?
Yeah.
And was Ampeg a household name at that time? Was it a big brand like it is today, or?
No, they were just a local company that built guitar amplifiers, and there was a machine shop, and there was a wood shop, and where they made parts for fretted instruments, and it was a very small company.
And you said you started as an intern, so what was your job when you first got there?
I swept up the floor in the stock room. I kept the place clean. I also was a inspector at receiving inspection when new parts come in and have to come up with tests for the parts and make sure everything was correct.
How long from intern to amp designer? How long was that path?
6 weeks, because Jess wanted me to put the SB12 together.
Wow.
So that was my first project, to get the SB12 running. I was like a technician working for Jess, and it was a very interesting project.
So did most of your knowledge and engineering knowledge come from on-the-job training, working at Ampeg, or did you go to school at some point?
I went to school. I went to Penn State University. Okay. I got a degree in chemical engineering. My father was an audiophile, so a lot of the knowledge was passed down from him. My grandfather ran the Hughes Phonograph Company, which was a company that made wind-up phonographs.
Oh, wow.
It's been in our family all these years, this concept of building things like that.
And you said the SVT was a little bit of a secret project when you guys started?
Yeah, none of the development work for the SVT was ever shown to Everett Hull. I think we showed him the power amp once. I brought it in as a project from home, saying, look at this, and he was interested in it, and he thought it was impractical. The original SVT had 2 811A output tubes in it, and it was 150 watts, and it was an amplifier designed for driving the recording head on a disc cutting lathe.
Wow.
And so that was developed in my basement at home, and when Everett was not in the picture anymore, Roger Cox got me to develop it into a bass amp.
So what was the mindset behind going from 150 watts in the power section to 300 watts, and was it just all about competing with guitar amps at the time? Was it?
Well, the amplifier was not meant to be a musical instrument amplifier at the time. It was built for a different purpose.
Yeah.
And when we decided to build the SVT, we needed a big power amp. The loudspeaker was not a vented baffle. It was a sealed box, which is a speaker that was typically less efficient. The speaker got so big because it had lots of cone displacement required to do the job. Obviously, it had lots of cone displacement capability. And Roger designed the speaker, and it was designed as a sealed baffle. A sealed baffle exits at a rate of 12 dB per octave. When it reaches the cutoff frequency, it exits at that rate. A vented baffle exits at 24 dB per octave. One that exits at 12 dB per octave and one that exits at 24. Obviously, you know which one's the winner is going to be. So this is the sealed box. It's going to have more deep low end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a good maneuver.
Yeah.
So that whole system, the SVT with the two A10 bottoms, that was an entire system all designed together.
Oh yeah.
To work in conjunction with one another.
Yeah. I never understood the concept of designing a bass amplifier with one guy's electronics and another guy's speaker. I just said, it makes no sense.
So why 8 10-inch speakers?
I don't recall the decision why 8 speakers and why 10-inch speakers, but it was thought that 10-inch speakers would have generally a good frequency response for bass amplifier application. And why was it 8? 8 10-inch speakers was considered the number of those speakers it would take to work reliably with that amplifier and not fail.
Gotcha.
That was a big risk back then too, because a lot of bass amplifiers employed either 15s or 18s. Was anybody really like thinking of using 10-inch speakers for bass back then, other than Ampeg?
No, I don't think so. I remember the amplifier of the time that was the rage was the acoustic 360.
Yep.
And that, what was that, a 18-inch driver?
It was a folded 18, and
the two amplifiers side by side, the acoustic 360 was not the winner.
how cutting edge was the SVT at that time?
It was quite different.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of a kind. A bass amp that big, done with tubes, I mean, I don't think I could have designed a 300 watt solid state amplifier at the time that I would have believed in to be reliable. That was early technology.
Was it well received in the market when it first came out? Were people really, really excited about it, or did it take a while to catch on?
No, it caught on in a hurry.
Yeah.
So it was very successful. There were problems with it. I mean, the transition from 6146s to 6550s, I came back from the East Coast Stones tour and I thought to myself, we're in trouble, because we had amplifiers going down. Keith Richards would use them for lead guitar, and he could play in a certain particular manner, and he can get the 3 tubes on the left to go cherry red in the plates, and then he changed his picking style and he get the 3 tubes on the right to go cherry red. Because of how he stressed the devices.
Wow.
We made the decision to go to 6550s, and that was a very wise decision. There's been all kinds of talk about which one sounds better and which one sounds worse. I think they both sound equal. They use the same output transformer, so they're the same impedance at the plate. There's no reason why they should be different, but the 6146s just weren't as reliable.
Which you actually brought up a very good point that I've just sparked a memory. You were on the Give Me Shelter tour when the Stones came over and they were basically beta testing those SVTs.
That was a Get Your Yahoo, yes.
Was it the Get? Was it the Get? Oh, okay. I thought it was. And it was you and who else was on that tour that you were basically sent out to field repair these as they.
Roger was doing the West Coast. I was doing the East Coast. Richie Mandela was there. The Stones tour was about 2 weeks before I got married, and I didn't take my wife with me because it was frowned upon. My future father-in-law would have killed me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd take my wife on a Rolling Stones tour.
I don't think anybody would take their wife on a Rolling Stones tour.
Are you a big Stones fan?
Now I am.
Yeah?
Yeah. Was it on that tour, or was there another concert moment where you heard the SVT and had this moment of like, wow, that's my baby? Like,
well, the first night I said,
yeah,
that's my baby, and
yeah,
you know, I was shocked at how loud the things were. I mean, it was just a wall of amplifiers. We used to service them for the Stones, and Mick Jagger had his 30th birthday, and there was a whole bunch of amplifiers sent back to us. I had to get them cleaned up to get the pie out of the grill cloth.
That's awesome.
Tell me, Bill, what were some of the challenges in developing and building the SVT?
Let's see. working with voltages that high. PC board layout was a problem. My boss at the time was a guy named Murray Figlin, and he did the PCB layout. I remember there's some spacings on the traces that I thought were a little bit too tight, and sure enough, when I turned it on the first time, we had a flashover at, it blew up. Obviously, that had to be fixed, and the breakdown voltages were a big issue. On the early SVTs, there was a notch in the chassis, in the seal of the chassis, right next to pin 3 on each output tube. That was to give that pin enough room so that it wouldn't flash over. And I think the SVTs even today have that notch in the seal. It's a thing we carried with us for years.
How does it feel now, 50 years later, and still knowing that the SVT is the industry standard for bass tone?
I'm amazed. I'm just amazed that the product is still this viable at this point.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, that's the SVT changed the way, recorded bass and live bass was heard.
Right.
Bass players owe a lot to this guy, just saying.
I did a lot of studio work in the 60s and, mastering tapes and everything, and I had a lot of interplay with various bass players who I won't identify, but I learned what the instruments should sound like.
What specific Ampeg amps do you recall? I remember we were talking about this.
Oh, I recall them all. I remember the SVT, I remember the B15S, I remember the VT40,
the V4.
The V4, the V4B, the VT22.
Yeah.
I mean...
you had your hands in all of those.
Yes.
Wow. So what other projects outside of the music industry have you worked on?
Well, when I left Ampeg, I went back to school. While I was going to school, I did transmitter maintenance, radio stations and television stations. And then I went out to California and I did a lot of work on semiconductor wafer and die inspection equipment. So these were devices that were used in IC factories to inspect IC masks and chips and all that. And then I went to work for International Video Corporation, and we did design of diagnostic medical imaging equipment. I designed videotape recorders for some years, television cameras.
Where do you see the world of bass amplification going in the future?
I see the world of bass amplification going to purposely designed systems that will be lighter, outperform heavier bass amplifiers. I see that as the wave of the future. Matter of fact, I've written a dossier to myself about the bass amp of the future, and I see the bass amp of the future being a hell of a good performer for 5-string bass. 5-string bass has never been the spotlight of the bass amp designer.
There's still a lot of bass players that are using 4 strings, but 5 strings and extended range instruments, but it seems like your concept going all the way back to the SVT was, and still is, instead of designing a head and cabinets separately, designing an entire system to work together.
Yeah, designing the two systems as separate entities is stupid. It's just, I mean, it shows a lack of definition of how things should be done.
Yeah. 2019 marks the 50th anniversary of the SVT, and in honor of that, we came out with the Heritage 50th Anniversary SVT, which is something we've never done before, that Ampeg hasn't done, but it actually pays closest homage to the original SVTs of the late 60s and 70s. Are we doing a good job?
Yeah, of course.
Do we get your thumbs up at least?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Under Yamaha, I mean, this is going to be very well maintained now. I think it's in good hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough. We can't thank you enough for coming out here, making the journey to sit down with us, for your contributions to the bass world. I know for certain as an SVT guy myself, my experience as a bass player would have been totally different had the SVT not existed. So you've made my life a lot easier as a working musician, so I want to thank you for that. Bass players all over the world owe this guy a debt of gratitude, and we're going to close it out with that.
Yeah. I'm Dom Liberati.
I'm Dino Monoxelos. This is Bill Hughes.
Keep tuning in. This is episode 2 of SVT Time, and we'll be back.